We're going to be starting on page 133 in the Mark of the Beast, and we're going to pick up where the great Kohan left off last week, speaking about this great city of New York. And actually, before I start reading there, I do want to go back to page 132, because I want to read at the top here where it talks about the state seal of New York. I just want to read that part really quick here. It says that the state seal, adopted in 1882, carries the state arms in the center of the seal. In the center of the seal is a shield depicting a Hudson River scene with sun, mountains, and two ships in sail. And to the right of the shield stands justice, and to the left, liberty. You know, so when I was reading that, I remember what the scripture says, how Yahweh was not pleased because in the last days there was no justice in the land. But here's this great city that's claiming to stand up for justice and liberty. And here it says that liberty's foot is a royal crown, signifying liberty's rejection of monarchical government. And, you know, and that's the rejection of a government that has a king or a queen. Okay, and so when I was thinking about that, it's like, you know, this great city under the inspiration of the adversary, you know, is rejecting, you know, a kingdom. You know, is rejecting a kingdom. You know, we know that the true kingdom or the true government is that government of Yahweh. And you can see in this seal here, it's proclaiming their own justice and its own liberty, and it's rejecting, you know, the like it says here, the royal crown. It says above the shield is a globe supporting a bald eagle, the official U.S. emblem. And on the banner below is the state motto, Excelsior, ever upward, okay? Ever upward. And, you know, and that just reminds me of the Tower of Babel, you know, and that whole concept of peace through war, you know, the building of a higher tower, you know, just moving upward, just moving upward, just thinking that they don't need, you know, Yahweh's way, but we're going to do things our own way, you know, advancing, you know, using our own means, you know, rejecting everything that Yahweh has to offer. And so I said that so that, you know, just to get our minds geared towards the things we're going to be reading about this great city and how very detailed Yahweh is when he's telling us about the prophecies concerning this city. You know, like it being divided in three parts. He talks about the, you know, the things that goes on in the city. He even talks about the various how musicians and trumpeters and things like that will no longer be in that city at a certain time period. And so he gives us all of these details about, you know, the city. And, you know, and a lot of people still don't understand that, you know, he's talking about New York, this city. And so before we came to the house of Yahweh, we didn't know either. You know, and so Yahweh made it easy for us as well. He said, okay, you're really not going to understand these things, but if you go to my house and listen to Yisrayl, whom I've spoken about in the scriptures, he'll tell you what city it is, and he'll tell you what to look for. So, you know, it's through pastor that we understand the things that we now understand. And it is something to be thankful about, because without a teacher, we'd still be out sinning and dying with the rest of the world who has no understanding of what's going on in this time period. And so at the bottom of page 133, it says, if you will notice, Babylon, New York is located close to the borough of Queens. The Egyptian obelisk known as Cleopatra's Needle stands in Central Park in New York City. And this obelisk is part of Babylonian worship and was the Tower of Nimrod, which supposedly reached high to the heavens to bring down the power of the god Baal, or Beelzebub, Lord of the heavenly habitation, to their worshipers. Okay? And so you can see all of these different symbols that they have are you know, derived from pagan God worship. You know, the rejection of Yahweh and the acceptance of God worship. And it says here that the Egyptian obelisk called Cleopatra's Needle stands in Central Park, and it dates from 1600 BY. So how fitting for Yochanan or John in describing this city to say, I sit as a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. And from Funk and Wagnall's Standard Reference Encyclopedia, Volume 18, 1959 and 1960, on page 6519, one can see a sky view of part of this great city. One can see it is both a major port and a huge city built on the seaside. As an example of the importance of this fact, Baltimore, Maryland, and London are major ports, but they are not located directly on the sea. Many other cities are located on the sea, but are not major ports. And up here at the very top of page 135, you can see a small picture of the city here. It says Fairchild Aerial Surveys. And this is an aerial view of New York City. And the borough of Manhattan, which is in the center, is separated from New Jersey by the Hudson River, which is on the left, and from the boroughs of Brooklyn and Queens by the East River, which is on the right. It says here that the Bronx borough, is north of Manhattan. Richmond, the fifth city borough, is not shown. And the northern tip of Governor's Island is in the center foreground. And so here in Revelations 18, chapter 18, verses 17 through 19, it says, "For in 1 hour so great riches is to come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour is she made desolate." And you can see there, again, this book was written, almost 40 years ago, and pastors still, at this time period, he highlighted 1 hour, and he's still emphasizing that today. So you can see how ahead of us pastor is, because even at this time he was showing us, look, it's not going to take long for these things to take place once they actually start taking place. But we see through the various things over the years how Yahweh's holding these things back. And for what reason is that, man? Why is Yahweh holding these things back? For us, right? For us. The whole plan is a plan of salvation for mankind. So what sense would it make to blow up the world if we're not ready to teach? Not that Yahweh's blowing up the world, but you know what I mean? To allow the world to be destroyed if there's no one that's going to change the way that things are right now. Okay, so Yahweh's allowing these things to be held back so that we can be ready to take our places, in this governmental system. Here it says that New York. George Washington, traveling with Governor George Clinton through New York, remarked that this new state might become the seat of empire. Okay, the seat of empire. Now, whether the state's popular name came from this comment is not known. But for many years, New York has been called the Empire State. And, and they have the Empire State Building as well. So these are terms that we are familiar with. It says that the state richly deserves this title. Okay, so it deserves to be called the Empire State, as we're about to go through some of these statistics here. It says, although only 29th among the states in area, New York State is first in population. It has nearly 15 million residents, about 10% of all people in the United States. It also ranks first among the states in manufacturing, construction, and wholesale and retail trade. Now he says here at the top of page 136, the people of New York. New York is predominantly an urban state with about 4 out of 5 of all its residents living in cities and towns. New York City alone has nearly 8 million people, or about 1/2 of the state's entire population. This city, together with the 2 Long Island counties of Nassau and Suffolk, and Westchester County to the city's north, have about 2/3 of all the people in New York State. The population upstate is about 5,500,000. These people reside in cities and towns chiefly along or near the Hudson River and the route of the Erie division of the New York State Barge Canal. Those in rural areas cultivate farms located principally in river valleys or generally rolling country. For many years, New York City has been the chief gateway for immigrants entering the United States. Okay, so, and this is what Pastor's been hitting on recently, okay? And you remember, like the Statue of Liberty, which we're about to get into here in a minute, but New York City has always been like the welcoming point for people from all over the world. And I can't remember how the saying went. I can't remember if it was a poem or whatever, what it was called, But I remember as a child we had to learn this in school where it went something like, give us your tired, you're poor, and so on, just like a saying like welcoming people to the U.S. And I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the United States, like New York City doesn't even stand for that anymore. It's like Pastor said, the attitude of the people in the U.S. is get out of our country. He said, remember years ago, take the head off the Statue of Liberty and put a hot hog's head on it or something like that. Because it's in a machine gun in their hand instead of a candle to light the way, because this is the attitude. We don't want anyone here. You guys are taking up all of our work, and, it's just this hatred, this mistrust for people, But it used to be the point where, it used to be to where everyone could come in through New York. People wanted to be here. Continuing on, it says, as a result, New York State has a much larger foreign-born population than any other state. And this is when, people were just coming in all the time, and were welcomed here. Continuing on, it says, its older stock includes such names as the Dutch Van Rensselaer, I don't know how to say these names, Rensselaers, Roosevelts, Schulers, and Stuyvesants. I apologize for the mispronunciation. It says German Astors, English Clintons, and Scottish Livingstons. Okay, so, all of these names are some of these names are very familiar, like the Roosevelts, the Clintons, the Livingstons. These are very popular names from families that have come from overseas and established themselves in this country a long time ago. Okay, here we're going to go into where it talks about the light of a candle. Okay, the light of a candle. In Revelations 18, verse 23, and the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. Older translations of the Bible, such as the King James Version, which was written before electricity was discovered, make this verse difficult to understand in the context that John or Yachanan wrote. The reader is reminded that Yachanan is speaking of a city here. It is a city bearing a distinctive light. Yachanan was using this light to identify this city to the reader hundreds of years later. In modern translations, such as the New International Version, Interlinear, Greek, English, New Testament by Zondervan Corp makes this clear. And you can see here where it's circled where it says of a lamp. Okay, and light of a lamp by no means shall shine in thee longer. Okay, it shall not shine in thee any longer. And you see the picture right here of the Statue of Liberty and Liberty Island, which was known as Bellows Island, as it says here in Pastor's writings, but it was changed to Liberty Island in, I think it was 1956. And I might have to check that out, but I think it was like around 1956 when it was changed to Liberty Island. But it says Bellows Island, where the Statue of Liberty stands, is where the light of a lamp shines. Okay, and that's that big torch that the Statue of Liberty holds up in her hand. And Yachanan specifically says the light of a lamp shall no longer shine in thee, okay, or shall shine no more in thee. Is there any other city in all the world that holds up a lamp to incoming travelers? And this is a question that we need to ask. Is there any other city that has this? And the answer is no. The mountains were not found. And in Revelation 16, verses 17 through 21, and the seventh Malach poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice out of the house of heaven from the throne saying, it is done. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. And the great city, which has three parts, and there's another clue right there. This great city has this great light, this light, and it's in three parts. Okay, so in this great city, the great city which has three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon came in remembrance before Yahweh to give unto her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his judgment. And every island fled away, and the mountains were no more. And there fell upon men a great hail out of heaven, every stone about the weight of a talent. And men blasphemed Yahweh because of the plague of hail, for the plague thereof was exceedingly great. And so after I read that, I was, how much does a hail, does this hail weigh? What's a talent? So I have some numbers for you. All right, so, and of course, it varies depending on, the country or what the talent is being used for. In money, when they're weighing silver or gold, the talent is a little bit heavier, but I'll get to that one in a second. But in Greek, a talent is about 26 kilograms, which is approximately 57 pounds. Okay? Now, this is hail we're talking about, the weight of a talent. So, hail, that's 57 pounds. What is that going to do to your car insurance? It's totaled out. Your car insurance, you can forget about it. Okay, it's done. In Roman, 32.3 kilograms, 71 pounds. Egyptian, 27 kilos, 60 pounds. Babylonian, 30.3 kilos, which is 60 pounds. Now, when a talent is being used to, in order to weigh gold or silver, a talent is approximately 50 kilograms, which is 110 pounds. Okay, 110, hail, well, this is not a 110-pound ball of hail won't be this. It'll be like large. It'll be like 12-year-olds falling out of the sky. Okay, it's like, that's heavy. 110 pounds just falling out of the sky. Okay, so forget the cars coming through the roof. Where are you going to go? How are you going to escape that? Okay, you can't go to your churches. It's coming through the roof. Okay, only Yahweh offers protection from these things, and we understand why these things are going to take place. But this is just the hail, the weight of a talent. It's amazing. Continuing on here on page 138, John, or Yachanan, when describing the destruction of this city, had never seen a skyscraper. How else would he have described them? In Collier's Encyclopedia, volume 16, 1959, shows what Yachanan might have seen in his vision of this city, what majestic mountains they were. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world visit the strikingly modern United Nations headquarters on the banks of the East River in New York City. But the beautiful glass and steel buildings are only a symbol. The United Nations is a world organization whose power lies only in the willingness of its members to meet together, discuss, and then suggest a plan of action on the particular problem before them. As a forum and perhaps a safety valve for the statesmen of the world, it has played and continues to play an important role in many of the crucial issues of our lifetime, or issues of our time. Indonesia, Korea, Suez, I don't know how to pronounce that. The Congo, disarmament, and that's just to name a few. And under the circumstances, it is not at all surprising that the United Nations should have its detractors as well as its admirers. Some criticize it for doing too little, some for doing too much. One thing is certain, however, since its foundation in 1945, the United Nations has more than doubled its membership. Too many of the new members' acceptance means introduction to a complex new world in which they will learn much. And here we're about to read the broken promise of the United Nations. Okay, this is a broken promise of the United Nations. It says here that foreign ministers and diplomats from 157 nations are convened this month, and I don't know what year this is, okay? But of course it's not this year. Pastor wrote this book back in the 70s, so this is of course back in those days here. But it says they met this month in New York City for the 38th session of the General Assembly of the United Nations. Speeches resound in a huge auditorium. A thick layer of blue smoke hangs over the crowd at the bar and the delegates' lounge. Nearby, in the spacious, dimly lit halls of the conference building, deputy delegates and assorted functionaries curl up in overstuffed chairs for long naps, with newspapers draped over their faces. In the secretariat building, soaring above the East River, extravagantly paid bureaucrats churn out a flood of memoranda, reports, and propaganda. Unfortunately, all this rhetoric, diplomatic shoulder-rubbing, and paper productivity will have few of the effects envisioned by the brightest minds of a war-weary world when they founded the organization in 1945. For what the UN was intended to be, it is not. What it was intended to do, it has not done. In the waning years of its fourth decade, it has become instead a frustration, corrupted, profligate. Okay, now that word profligate means basically just wasteful. Okay, it means wasteful, like to waste money, to waste materials, and so on. It's just become wasteful. Okay, so it's a frustration, it's corrupted, and it wastes. It's very wasteful. And in the words of former U.S. Ambassador Daniel Patrick Moynihan, a dangerous place. Okay, and this is speaking of the UN, dangerous place. And these are the world leaders that's supposed to be getting together to solve the problems of the world. Okay, but they're not, like it says here, they haven't been doing what it was intended to do. You know, are there any problems that's solved? You know, are we in a peaceful world where there's no war? No, absolutely not. Okay, music of harpers. After the destruction of this city befalls. In Revelations 18, verse 8, therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is Yahweh our Father, who judges her. He says, the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all in thee. In Revelations 18, verse 22, the New York Metropolitan Opera Company and the New York Philharmonic Orchestra are world-renowned, but after the seventh vial, they will never be heard again. Okay, they will never be heard in the city again. And in Revelations 18, verses 20 through 22, rejoice over her, you heavens, and you apostles and prophets, for Yahweh has judged you, avenged you on her. And a mighty Malach took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpets shall be heard no more at all in thee, and no craftsman of whatsoever craft he be shall be found any more in thee, and the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. And so again, this is a great detail that Yahweh goes into to show us exactly what city he's talking about. The city that's divided into three parts, the city that has this great lamp, this great candle, the city that's, you know, has this huge population that's great in trade, this wealthy city, this very industrial city. You know, it's the financial capital of the world. You know, Wall Street is located there. Okay, so there's no doubt. I think we're going to read that here, where it shows that New York is definitely, you know, the financial capital of the world. But here it says, craftsmen of whatsoever craft is self-explanatory. New York City is the center of arts and crafts, from gemstone setting to fine paintings. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee, signifying the factories and heavy industry will not be heard again in this destroyed city. And now pastors get into another aspect here, sorceries. In Revelations 18:23, it says, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. You know, most people, when they think of sorceries, you know, they think of like wizards and witches and magic and, you know, pentagrams and cauldrons and eye of newt and spider webs and all of these things, you know, getting ready to cast spells and stuff. And, you know, the scriptures, you know, identify sorceries, you know, not just those things, but, you know, as we're going to continue, we're going to see that, you know, sorceries is something totally different here. Or he's showing us another aspect of sorceries, I should say. And it says here that the Greek word translated sorceries in 5331 in the Greek Dictionary of Strong's Concordance, and it means medication, pharmacy, sorcery, witchcraft. Okay? Witchcraft. Now, is there a scripture that's coming in your mind when you hear the word witchcraft? What is witchcraft? Rebellion. Okay? Witchcraft is rebellion. Okay, rebellion against what? The laws of Yahweh. Okay, the laws of Yahweh. Okay, so these are things that we know. So now with that understanding, we should be able to put these things together as Pastor's been teaching us. Okay, so by sorceries, by this witchcraft, this rebellion, these teachings that are in opposition to Yahweh's way, we can see why, many people are deceived and dying. Okay, and we see here part of this deception is medication, this pharmacy, right? That's a part of the definition. These doctors saying that, look, I can heal you, I can save you. You can save me. Okay, what do I need to do? Well, when you cook rabbit, you need to wear gloves. Okay, that's okay. What else can you tell me? Stay out of the sun. As you can see, I didn't listen to that one, did I? Stay out of the sun. Don't eat salt. And, it's a whole list of things. Okay, well, that's not going to save you. Okay, Yahweh said that the sun is beneficial, salt is beneficial, but rabbit is not beneficial. Don't eat the rabbit. So we can see here this is it goes deeper than, what the world portrays as, as witchcraft, as far as the cauldrons and the witches with like flying on brooms and black cats and things like that. This is it's a teaching. It's a matter of fact, in the April 2008 newsletter, it's entitled Sorceries, and Pastor really lays out, what these sorceries are. It says seduction, idolatry, and deception. Okay, seduction, idolatry, and deception is all a part of sorcery. It's all a part of this God worship. And so, matter of fact, before I continue on here, before we get into the medical doctors, I have something here that I wanted to read to you, because I remember years ago watching the news here, and they were saying how, the medical doctor as a MD-related services is the third leading cause in death in the United States. Okay, so medical doctor-related or anything pertaining to your doctor, medications, surgeries, all of these things were the third leading cause in the United States. Okay, and I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty amazing. Then when you think about insurance, you buy insurance because, I remember listening to one natural doctor. He was an MD, but he got out of that after he continued to educate himself and realized how dangerous it was. And he said, and I'm going to try to quote him exactly how I said it. He said that when you buy insurance, what you're doing is that you're betting that you're going to get so sick one day that you're not going to be able to afford to pay for it. And then you pay for a service that's the third leading cause of death. He said, we need to have our heads examined. You're going to get so sick that you can't even pay for it, but you're investing in the third leading cause of death. Okay, so let me show you this paper here, and then I'm going to read some things on it. Okay, so this is from the American Journal. I can't remember all of the words, but it's some American Journal of Medicine or something. But here, I'm going to read some of this. It said, all these are deaths per year. 12,000 unnecessary surgeries, 7,000 medication errors in hospitals, 20,000 other errors in hospitals, 80,000 infections in hospitals, 106,000 non-error negative effects of drugs. And these total to 225,000 deaths. You see it? 225 deaths per year from, what is that word? Iatrogenic causes. And that means, and that's a word that's defined as and includes, it says here, what does this word iatrogenic means? This term is defined as induced in a patient by a physician's activity, manner, or therapy. And this is used especially of a complication of treatment. So this is a term for, people who actually go and see the MD, the medical doctor, from the treatment from a doctor. Okay, iatrogenic. And here, I have some more stats down here, but it says that of 13 countries in a recent comparison, the United States ranks an average of 12th, which is second from the bottom for 16 available health indicators, and more specifically, the ranking of the U.S. on several indicators. And this is what it's talking about, how it ranks like second to last, or even last in some of these areas. It says 13th, which is dead last, for low birth rate percentages. 13th for neonatal mortality and infant mortality overall. 11th for postnatal mortality. 13th for years of potential life lost, and that's excluding external causes like accidents and things like that. 11th for life expectancy. 10th for life expectancy at 15 years for a female, and 12th for males. 10th for life expectancy at 40 years for a female, 9th for males. It ranks 7th for life expectancy at 65 years for a female, 7th for males. 3rd for life expectancy at 80 years for females, 3rd for males. And this isn't third place, this is like from the bottom. And 10th for age-adjusted mortality. Okay? So, you know, the United States, as powerful as it is, we're sick and dying. And that's what this is showing. You know, for all of the medical advances, you know, we're dying. But don't worry, we have the strongest military on earth. Okay, so you could put your trust in the military, because other than that, you're done. You know, but those are just some of the statistics. There wouldn't have been enough time to read everything that was, you know, in the article, from, you know, believing in the deception that's being taught as far as, you know, trust the pharmacies, you know, trust these things, you know, and remember the history of the medical doctors. Okay, remember the history of this. And again, you know, we're talking about the sorceries, this deception, you know, because in the early 1900s, you know, the whole medical industry was basically on a level playing field. The chiropractors, you know, iridology, natural healing through the use of herbs and things like that, you know, until I think his name was Abraham Flexner. I think it's Abraham Flexner. He was funded by the Carnegie Institute, and he traveled the whole United States, and he visited different colleges, you know, these medical colleges who prescribe drugs. And so when he traveled the U.S. over these 5 years, he went back to the Carnegie Institute with his report. And so what the Carnegie Institute did, they gave these colleges that prescribe drugs, you know, millions of dollars of free money. Okay, and so that pushed the medical doctor forward, and then it left, you know, all of these other practices, you know, like out of the dark. And then the threat was, if you don't get rid of these other, you know, forms of healing, we're not going to fund you. You know, they consider like iridology and you know, and all of these other forms of healing, they called it quackery. You know, there was no scientific proof that those things worked. But this pill works. And so that's how, you know, the medical doctor propelled, you know, to the front. And then with all of that, you know, they started teaching people, you know, you don't know anything. Trust your doctor. Okay. You don't need to worry about it. Just do exactly what your doctor tells you to do. Okay. Thus putting your trust in the third leading cause of death in the United States. Okay. And so you can see people, they don't even question their doctors anymore. They do exactly what they're taught to do. They do what their doctor tells them to do. They stay out of the sun, they don't eat salt, and they do all of those things, and they continue to die. You know, 225,000 deaths per year. 225,000 deaths per year. Okay? So let's continue reading here. In Revelations 18:23, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. You know, I mean, the pharmaceutical company, the companies, billions of dollars a year. This is no secret. Billions of dollars a year is what they make. Are not the merchants, medical doctors, considered as the great men of the earth? You know, and some of these men have, you know, what they would call like a God complex, where, you know, they're your savior. You know, when you're on that table, your life is in their hands. You know, and a lot of them have that attitude. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. You know, I'm God right now, you know, because I'm going to be the determining factor whether you live or die. You know, it's unreal. But as Yachanan knew, people are deceived into believing the medical doctors can make them live forever. Many people look to science and their doctors to save their physical bodies, just as they look to this Babylonian system of government by the people and of the people to bring them peace. But this world will have neither peace nor salvation through any other than Yahweh. Okay? They're not going to have it any other way except through Yahweh. And this is the lesson that they're learning right now. In the December 6, 1982 issue of the U.S. News and World Report, an article was published entitled, Doctor's Dilemma, Treat or Let Die. Okay, so here's the dilemma. Should we treat them or should we let them die? Okay, so we're about to find out why they were having this dilemma. Okay, part of the introductory headlines read, high technology tools of medicine that can keep people alive, but offer little hope for recovery after creating hard ethical choices for doctors and patients, as well as for federal health officials. So here they have the tools that can keep people alive, but they can't heal them. This is what they're saying right here. We can keep you alive, but we can't really help you recover. So this is the dilemma that they're facing with their increase in technology. You know, I can keep your heart beating, and we can keep money coming in until somebody says shut off the plug. But by then, we've probably already made, what, $1 million, $500,000, whatever. You know, well, he'll never recover. He's going to be in a vegetative state for the rest of his life. Now, but we can keep him comfortable. Okay, yeah, let's hope for the best. So they're continuing to collect insurance money, off this person that they know won't recover. Okay? So here it says that almost $300 billion a year is spent in the U.S. on medical cures. $300 billion is spent on medical cures a year. And people still get the common cold. You would think $300 billion would solve that problem, right? $300 billion, and all that can come up is with Tamiflu. Sorry about that. I heard it. It's Tamiflu. Is that the name of it? Tamiflu. And that's the best that they could do, It's like Pastor said, the person goes to the doctor, okay, if I take that medicine, how long will it take before I'm better? Oh, a week. Well, if I don't take the medicine, how long will it be before I get better? 7 days. What am I missing here, doc? Well, nothing. Just take the medicine. Okay, I trust you. That's the attitude, But, all this money is being spent, for cures. But let's see what Yahweh says about this. Let's turn to Yirmiah. Yirmiah, where's that? Yirmiah chapter 30. Yirmiah chapter 30, it's on page 598. And let's take a look at verse 12. It says, for this is what Yahweh says, your affliction is incurable, your wound is severe. There is no one to plead your cause that you might be bound up or treated. You have no healing medicine. He's telling them you have no healing medicines. Now take a look at, let me continue to read here. It says, all your lovers have forgotten you. They do not see you, for I have wounded you with the wound of an enemy, with the fierceness of chastisement for the multitude of your iniquities, because your sins have increased. So why do you cry about your affliction? Your disease is incurable because of the multitude of your iniquities, because your sins have increased. I have allowed these things to come upon you. Okay, so their diseases are incurable. Now, over in Yirmiah chapter 46, which is found on page 612, take a look at verse 11. It says, go up into Gilead and take balm, O virgin, the daughter of Egypt, or the daughter in Egypt. In vain you will use many medicines. Okay, in vain you will use many medicines, but you will not be cured. Okay, so you're doing it for nothing. Okay, because you're denying or rejecting the teachings that will show you how to get these curses in the first place, these diseases in the first place. People want to be able to go out and do whatever it is they want to do and take a pill and be okay. But health comes from a lifestyle of making right choices. Okay? Listen to that again. Health comes from a lifestyle of making right choices. Okay? And if we continue to make poor choices, or sin, as it were, eating the unclean thing and having unlawful relationships, then we're going to die. Okay? There's not going to be any medicine that's going to be able to heal that. The only thing that removes those curses is righteousness, choosing to do what's right and removing yourself from those abominable practices, those things that will cause you to become sick. Okay, so there's not any medicine that's going to help you in those situations. And Yahweh plainly shows it. The diseases are incurable. And continuing on here at the bottom of page 40, it says, the plain hard facts are that doctors cannot cure anyone. Doctors can only work along with the body's defenses or give drugs that hide the symptoms. Sadly, most doctors only treat the symptoms and never are able to find the cause, giving false hope to the critically ill. Okay, and we've seen the footage, we've seen the news where some doctors even take advantage of people, okay, healthy people, and tell them, oh, you have cancer, well, I need to do this x-ray, I need to do this treatment, we need to do this, and, and rake in millions of dollars off these, unnecessary surgeries, as we just saw here. What did it say? 12,000. Let's look at this again here. 12,000 unnecessary surgeries. 12,000 of them, okay? And those are just the ones that they know about. 12,000 unnecessary surgeries. I remember the man said, he was talking to the one patient, said, so how did you feel after you found out that you really didn't have like brain cancer or whatever, the disease was? And he said, he was just hurt because he trusted the doctor. He thought that the doctor was the one that was supposed to take care of him. Okay? And I remember years ago, in the house, I played some footage, some clips from the Montel Williams show, where there was people on that show where doctors had done things like, after a surgery, they had left like, blades and things inside of their bodies, And the one man, he had said, I think it was like a knife or some kind of cutting tool that was like this big that they left inside of him, sewed it up inside of him. And he said he had been feeling a sharp pain, for like days. And so he went to get an x-ray, and that's when they found out that, we left that tool in him. And another man, went to the doctor because he had a brain tumor. Okay, he had a tumor. And the doctor operated on him. But guess what? He operated on the wrong side of the brain. The wrong side. And so he said, sign this paper, and tomorrow we're going to go back in and cut it out on the side that it's on. And the man signed the paper, but he still sued because he wasn't even, really cognitive. He wasn't really aware of what was going on. But these are the things that go on a regular basis. People putting their trust, again, in the third leading cause of death in the United States. Okay, trusting in a system, in a form of teaching that doesn't teach you not to get the disease or to get the curse, but says, look here, this is what we can do for you after you have all of the fun that you want. We got this pill and we can keep you going. We have this treatment and we can keep you alive. We can't help you recover, but we can keep you alive. Okay? It doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense at all. But this is the teaching. This is the sorcery. This is the deception, that so many people are under. Continuing on here, it says, life comes from, this is the top of page 141. It says, life comes from Yahweh alone, and only Yahweh can make life eternal. Through the false hope inspired by Satan, many will continue believing that sorceries, as Yakanah called it, will prolong their lives. And the doctors admit there comes a time when you can recognize that you can keep pumping blood and keep a body functioning, but it is not life. And this is from the U.S. News and World Report, December 6th, 1982. And reading that, about these, this false hope, this deception from Satan reminds me of the scripture, and I'm thinking in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, where it says, even the adversary appears as a minister of light. So there's no wonder as her, if her apostles or her disciples also appear as ministers of light, but they're going to be judged based on their works. Okay, because these doctors, they present themselves as helping people, but what are they really helping them to do? They're not teaching them not to go back to sin. They're not teaching them not to go back to fornication and adultery, not to go back to drunkenness, not to go back to, their lifestyle of raping and murder and pedophilia and bestiality and homosexuality and all of these things. They're not doing that. They're not teaching them anything like that. They're saying, look, if you want to keep doing that, just pay me enough money and I'll make sure you get what you need to carry on a little bit longer. That's the teaching. That's the teaching. The two Babylons connected through drugs. U.S. News and World Report. After years of hesitation, Italy and the Roman Catholic Church finally are facing up to the problem long concealed behind a barrier of silence, lies, and corruption, the mafia. Once little more than a local protection racket centered on the island of Sicily, the mafia has become one of the world's leading drug entrepreneurs. Today, its activities are generating profits in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually. Its tentacles reach into virtually every corner of Italian life, and it has become one of the major sources of heroin entering the United States. In the U.S., the 25 active families of the mafia of La Cosa Nostra are estimated to gross up to $200 billion a year from the kinds of crime with which it usually is associated. Gambling, arson, loan sharking, and drug trafficking and tens of millions more. Up to 60% of heroin reaching the U.S. is thought to be processed in mafia-run laboratories on the island Sicily. The value of this trade runs to about $6 billion annually. Most of this money generated in America returns to Italy to be laundered by corrupt bankers and invested by the mafioso in legitimate businesses. Heroin, after being refined in Sicily, is moved by ship or air to the U.S. It is no coincidence that the New York, Rome, Palermo flight is known as Sicily as the Godfather. Sorcery means drugs and those who deal in drugs. Police on Sicily are said to have discovered 4 processing laboratories, each capable of producing 110 pounds of high-grade heroin a week, worth about $12 million on New York streets. It is plain to see that when New York is destroyed, a major drug distribution area will be wiped out. And so you can see it here again, how, Yahweh showing us again, sorcery, isn't just, the magic and, the incantations, but it's also the drugs. It's the seduction. It's this lust for money and wealth and power. All of these things, will entice a man or can entice a man, to break Yahweh's law. Okay? This greed, all of these, these negative character traits, because of this lust for wealth and power. I can't remember where I heard it from, but someone that once said, what do powerful men want more? More power, exactly. Powerful men want more power, okay? But we're not being taught that here at Yahweh's Great House. We're taught to be servants. So to the world, we're crazy, right? We're crazy. What? You want to be a servant? All right, well, go get me something. Okay, well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, Like what does the scripture says about Issachar? Voluntarily coming here to do this work. Okay, learning to be a true servant. Okay, learning what it means to serve people. Yahweh is the greatest servant there is. Okay, he's the greatest servant there is, and he's teaching us to be great servants as well, so that we can be a blessing to people, so that we could benefit people. But if we have in our minds this idea of having power and authority and this rulership, then we didn't learn the lesson that Yeshua was teaching. He said, look, you can't be like them, wanting to rule over one another. You can't be like them. You have to love one another. A pastor really did an excellent job yesterday, getting that into our minds through the scriptures that he was reading to us, showing brotherly love and kindness towards one another. Remember I really want to read that again, just because it was so impactful, and I'm not trying to get off of this subject here. I'm really not. Where was it? 1 Kepha 3, right? 1 Kepha 3:8. That's where he started. But he says, finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another, full of brotherly love, sympathetic and courteous, not repaying evil for evil, nor reviling with reviling, but on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this, so that you may inherit the blessing. For he who would love life and see righteous days, let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking guile. Let him turn away from evil and do righteousness. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of Yahweh are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayers. But the face of Yahweh is against those who do evil. Okay, the face of Yahweh is against those who do evil. So here at the very top, when Pastor was reading that, the only thing I kept thinking about was how he always emphasized, in the last days. In the last days, in the last days. How Yeshua said, in the last days, they will know you because of the love you show for one another. In this recent newsletter, Pastor said that they will learn war no more. Those are the final words for this last day's work. Okay, when you tie all of those teachings in, it shows you, look, finally, be of one mind. Be of one mind. Have the same mind in you that Yeshua Messiah had in himself. Be in unity with these teachings. Show this compassion for one another. These are the blessings that, that Yahweh is pouring out upon us, and we need to be able to show these things to others. Okay? These are the teachings. Continuing on here, it says, we're going into this numbering system. It says that the numbering system in America today is the Arabic system, which employs Hindu Arabic numerals, as Webster Dictionary confirms. Now, the Arabic numerals, the figures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and the 0 used in India, also called Hindu Arabic numerals. So according to the Biblical and Theological Dictionary in 1833, the eastern and northern parts of Arabia were first peopled by numerous families of Cush, the father of Nimrod, who was against Yahweh. Okay, so remember, it was this system. Okay, this system, he was the father of this system, this, that opposed Yahweh, which started this whole, this pharmaceutical industry and all of these things that are against the way of Yahweh. Hey, look, you don't need to eat clean food. Hey, we got this over here. You'll be just fine. Okay, hey, you can do this. You'll be just fine. So this is what we're talking about right here, this Nimrod system. So in Arabia, or at last the eastern and northern parts of it, were first peopled by some of the numerous families of Cush, who appear to have extended themselves, or have given their name as the land of Cush, or Asiatic Ethiopia, to all the country from the Indus on the east to the borders of Egypt on the west, and from Armenia on the north to Arabia Deserta on the south. By those Cushites, whose first plantations were on both sides of the Euphrates and Gulf of Persia, and were the first that traversed the desert of Arabia. The earlier commercial communications were established between the east and the west. And since Yahweh has given us the number 666 to identify man, we can also use the number to identify Satan, who controls this man. And by using the Arabic numbering system on the English language, we discover many works of Satan numerically evolved, Gematria 2666. So here at the top of page 143, it says the number of a man. Yahweh's number is 13. Okay, Yahweh's number is 13, but man's number is 6. To find the gematria to man, we must add the number 6 to each successive letter of the alphabet. A equals 6, B equals 12, C equals 18, D equals 24, E equals 30, etc. So it is interesting to note the Babylonians used the number 6 as the base to their numbering system. By using this system, we find two words: Lucifer, which is the same as Satan, and hell or Hades, which is the grave, equals 666. And you can see those words right here: Lucifer, hell, or Hades, all equals 666. And by this same system and the words mark of the beast, the number 666 is computed. Mark, which is 258, of, which is 126, and beast, which is 282. And when you add those up, it equals 666. So we see many things belonging to Satan add up to 666. Now compute the words New York, which many aspire to be the modern Babylon. New, which equals 252, and York, which is 414, which equals 666. Okay, 666. Not only is it possible to identify this Nimrod system, and it says here the man through the number 666, and we know that the man that leads the kings of the earth in these last days is the Pope, and we've covered that earlier in the book with the words on the his mitre is vicarious fele day or something like that, and that equals 666 as well. Okay, the words on his mitre equals 666, and and those words means in place of the Son of God, and it's showing you, we know that the God that they worshiped, this Jesus, isn't the Son of Yahweh. Okay, Jesus is the Son of God who did away with, or teaches that Yahweh's laws are done away with. Okay, and so that's who he's representing, the doing away with Yahweh's laws. But the scripture says something completely different than that. Yeshua taught completely different to the doing away with Yahweh's laws. He said, I haven't come to do away with the laws, but to establish them. In other situations, he said, look, I came to magnify the laws. Not only can you not do that, you can't even think about it. You need to control the way you're thinking. Because if you keep thinking in that manner, you're going to end up doing it. So control the way that you think. So you see, what is Yeshua teaching? He's teaching you to stop, think, consider your options, and do what? Proceed with the right choice. Yeshua was teaching a peaceful solution. Right? Oh, y'all don't believe me? Yeshua was teaching a peaceful solution. Abel was teaching a peaceful solution. Why are you angry, Cain? If you do what's right, will you not be accepted? So why don't you just do what's right? Change the way that you're thinking. Yeah, I know you want to act like that. That's how you were made. But look, if you do these things, if you develop this positive character that Yahweh is trying to teach you, you're going to be accepted by him. Peaceful solution. Okay? Peaceful solution. Throughout the entire scriptures, the peaceful solution is taught from Genesis to Revelations. Okay, from Genesis to Revelations, you see the peaceful solution. Okay, but guess what? It didn't stop at Revelations, because now it's been extended into our time period as well, because we're the finishing work. So continuing, I better not. Let me see, where am I at here? I'm at the top. I'll finish this paragraph here. Let me start at the top again. But it's not only is it possible to identify this Nimrod system, or this man that represents this system or stands for the system through the number 666, but it is also possible to identify the second Babylon, New York, which will fall in the last days. It is also part of the second beast. Okay? It's also part of the second beast. And that's where I'm going to stop here, man, at the top of page 144. And next week, the Great Kahan's going to pick up there, right in that second paragraph there at the top. So, once again, think about all of the details that Father Yahweh gave us concerning these last days, the prophecy of this city, even down to the musicians that play in the city, these world-renowned musicians. Oh, you won't hear them in that city anymore. The major factories and industries, no longer. The light of that lamp, no longer shining. You see, it's not welcoming people anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually cut the light out. Literally, just cut it off. Nope, you're no longer welcome. But Yahweh gives us all of these details, okay, showing us the time period that we're in. What did Pastor say yesterday? I suspect that it'll be when? This year. Okay, he said, I suspect it'll be this year. So we should be preparing ourselves, like it's going to take place, tomorrow. So when we leave here, should we go out arguing and fighting? No. Absolutely not. Should we go out, playing Nintendo and Xbox and those things? No. We should be studying, preparing, for the positions that Yahweh has set up before we were even born. Okay? Think about this before I close. Last thing. Man, it's so much. Think about this. I was talking to the men in overseas this morning in Port Harcourt in Africa. And, and we were discussing some things, and I said to him, imagine the honor that we have in these last days, like the honor that Abraham has as being called a friend of Yahweh. Who here wants to be known as a friend of Yahweh? Praise Yahweh. That's huge. I'm seeing like, man, Abraham, you're a friend of Yahweh. That's like awesome. Jacob is what? The apple of Yahweh's eye, right? Man, the apple of Yahweh's eye. And then we have, what's another example? King David, a man after Yahweh's own heart. Yahweh don't throw those things out there to just anyone. You understand? He doesn't just throw it out there. So these men have found honor in the eyes of Yahweh. Okay, now think about what we have in these last days. And this is the part that kind of had me like choked up. Here we have Yahweh's last days anointed witness, right? Yisrayl Hawkins, right? Now think about what Yahweh did for this man. First of all, he named him in the womb, right? Yahweh named him through a 1-year-old boy, right? Okay, if that wasn't enough, he did it again when he said, you will change your name to Yisrayl, and you won't even know that it's me that did it. Yahweh named him twice. And you're his seed. So how exciting is that, knowing that Yahweh named this man twice, and we're here in Yahweh's great house. So we have Abraham with his great honor. We have Jacob with his great honor. We have King David with his great honor, and Pastor with his great honor of being named by Father Yahweh twice. You know, that's amazing to me. You know, man, if you can't find reasons to rejoice in Yahweh's house, I don't know. You know, there's a lot of things to rejoice about. You know, so I want to encourage you to continue to study, prepare, because Yahweh has great things for his house. Okay, so endure the tests and trials, rejoice in them, and become perfect. May Yahweh bless your understanding.